evolution of Captain Hook. Captain James Hook makes his debut appearance in the 1924 silent live-action movie Peter Pan, the first on-screen adaptation of the original 1904 play by J.M. Barrie, as the main antagonist, portrayed by Ernest Torrance. Here, he appears as a fully grown-up man wearing his traditional pirate clothes, consisting of a triangular black hat over his long and curly black hair, wearing a cape with various weapons, and also a suit with a white ruffled shirt and his distinctive hook on the right hand. In the story, he first appears battling with and defeating a band of Neverland Indians in an attempt to finally find Peter and the Lost Boys in order to avenge his right hand, which had been cut off by Peter in one of their previous fights, and then eaten by a crocodile, who followed him ever since. Hook tried to protect himself from the crocodile by putting an alarm clock inside it so that its sound would warn him of its approach, but Peter then took it out with no problem. After Hook and his pirate crew found and kidnapped the Lost Boys, he left poison in Peter's medicine to kill him before returning to his ship, Jolly Roger. However, at the end, all his plans got foiled, and he couldn't defeat Peter in their sword fight, after which he jumped off the ship's plank into the ocean, demonstrating that he had lost. Hook appears next in the 1953 first Disney animated adaptation Peter Pan, based on the original play, again as the main antagonist and also as one of the most recognizable and popular villains in Disney's animated franchise, with an expanded role, voiced by Hans Conried. Here, he appears as a slim, fully grown man with long, lush black hair, thick eyebrows, and his recognizable two-way thin mustache, wearing a frilly white cravat underneath a red coat with gold lining and red cuffs, purple pants, and a large hat with a feather in it, while also usually carrying his sword. Interestingly, this version of Hook has his left hand cut off and replaced with a hook, rather than his right hand, which is his most common portrayal in other movies as well. With regard to his personality, in contrast to the original novel, he's portrayed as a much more comically villainous character, as well as a quite vain and dastardly coward with a childish temper, prone to throwing tantrums and being overdramatic. In the story, he continues his revenge journey, caused by his utter contempt and hatred toward Peter for defeating him and cutting off his hand in their previous battle, but now with the addition of his personal henchman, Mr. Smee, who's usually just an additional source of his problems due to his clumsiness. At first, he starts with his attack on the Indians to capture the chief's daughter, Tiger Lily, to coerce her into revealing Peter's hideout. But after the first plan fails because Peter defeats him yet again, almost causing him to be eaten by the crocodile, he takes advantage of Tinkerbell's jealousy toward Peter and then leaves a bomb inside a present box as a way to kill him, as opposed to the original poison. However, at the end, despite his many attempts, he still ends up failing by getting defeated by Peter and his friends in a humiliating manner, with him even begging for mercy and then trying to escape from the crocodile. Hook cameos next in the live-action wraparound skit animated series The Mouse Factory, in the episode Alligators, during the replay of the scene from the 1953 movie in which an alligator almost eats him. Then Hook reappears in the 1988 Australian animated adaptation Peter Pan, with some elements of the 1953 movie in his arch-enemy role, voiced by Philip Hinton. Here, his design is very similar to his Disney incarnation, with the only differences being that now his shirt is yellow, he wears red shorts, and has a purple feather in his hat, as well as different proportions of his face, having a smaller nose and much wider jawline. In the story, he follows a very similar path to the previous movie, but now he attempts to kill not only Peter but also Wendy with the use of a poisoned cake, as well as captures the Indian princess Tiger Lily, specifically to make her a mother for his pirate crew, based on their wishes, instead of as a way to find Peter's location. However, as per tradition, all his attempts end up being futile, culminating in his humorous defeat by Peter, and then his desperate try to run away from the hungry crocodile. In the animated adaptation TV show Peter Pan and the Pirates, Hook appears as Peter Pan's main nemesis, voiced by Tim Curry. Here, his appearance was significantly changed to now being a very tall and muscular man with tanned skin and long white curled hair, more natural face proportions, and also a noticeably redesigned outfit of a black coat, dark blue cape with a red interior lining, purple gloves, purple pants, dark blue boots, and a large black bicorn hat with crossbones and a hook. Additionally, his hook on the right hand was also modified to have a hinge on it that allows the hook to split apart and grab various objects. The series traditionally focuses on the Hook's mission of revenge against Peter, but also adds some details regarding his past, such as his story of becoming a pirate alongside his brother Jasper, before the two had a falling out due to a dispute over money, and expands on their adventures and challenges. Following, Hook reappears in the 1991 live-action movie with his nickname, set in a modern day as a sequel to the original story, in his antagonistic role, portrayed by Dustin Hoffman. Here, Hook is presented as a real-life version of his Disney incarnation, looking and behaving very similarly, with the only differences being that his skin now has a reddish color, and his long, lush black hair is actually just a wig, covering his balding head. The story is happening after the time when Peter left Neverland and Hook alongside it to live the life of an adult, leaving Hook depressed and without a purpose in life. Because of this, Hook devises a plan and kidnaps Peter's two children to lure him back to Neverland in order to continue their fun and entertaining battles with each other, which he succeeds at, but, upon meeting with Peter, he finds out that he has lost both his memory and his fighting skills, and even tried to offer Hook money for his children, which he rejected, and at first tried to kill him out of complete disappointment due to him losing a rival that gave meaning to his life. However, he soon gets stopped by Tinker Bell, who convinces him to give Peter 3 days to restore his fighting skills and come back for a battle. In preparation, Hook even attempts to persuade Peter's children that their father never loved them, in order to coerce them to stay in Neverland with him, which fails at the end, after Peter returns with his memory and skills restored, and defeats him and the big crocodile statue eats him. In the animated TV show Raw Toonage, Hook cameos in the episode Don Carnage, voiced by Corey Burton, where he encounters and battles with Don Carnage for his treasure chest, ending up in him pinning Don to a tree and stealing his chest. Then Hook appears shortly in the 1995 live-action musical series Mickey's Fun Songs in the episode Beach Party at Walt Disney World, voiced by Corey Burton, as an actor dressed in Disney's Hook costume who battles Peter Pan on a ship and gets defeated at the end. Following, Hook appears in the animated TV show House of Mouse as a recurring cameo character in his slightly adapted Disney incarnation, voiced by Corey Burton. Hook is first featured at the beginning of each episode during its opening, where he unsuccessfully tries to make a handshake with Donald Duck with his hook, and then during funny and interesting situations in several episodes, such as in Dining Goofy, where he is shown to get fed up with Donald, allegedly telling jokes to everyone about him, or in the Donald Wants to Fly, where he shakes in fear behind Mr. Smee after seeing the magic carpet go through multiple TikTok crocodiles, completely undamaged, and he also has both hands due to an error in animation, or in the Ask Von Drake, where he helped Mickey and others, trying to prove that Ludwig von Drake can't know everything, and then also alongside Smee during the head count of all the guests. Next, Hook reappears in the 2001 animated crossover Christmas special, Mickey's Magical Christmas, toward the end, alongside Hades and Jafar, and then also during the final photo. In the 2002 animated sequel movie to the 1953 Peter Pan, Return to Neverland, situated many years after the events of the previous movie, Hook reappears as the main antagonist, voiced by Corey Burton. In the story, Hook goes through a similar plot to the first movie, but now, in order to lure Peter Pan to him, he kidnaps Jane, thinking that she's Wendy, and then even summons a giant octopus to eat them both, which Peter and Tinker manage to turn against him instead and get him almost eaten as a result. After tasting Hook, the octopus begins to play a role very reminiscent of the crocodile from the previous movie. Then, desperate to finally find a way to kill Peter, he finds an opportunity in none other than Jane herself, who wanted to go home so much that she accidentally helped Hook capture Peter to do so. This is the first time when Hook got really close to finishing his nefarious plan, but, as always, he gets defeated eventually by Peter and his friends as well as Jane, with his whole ship now getting destroyed and him ending up being chased by the octopus. Then, Hook reappears in the 2002 animated Halloween special, Mickey's House of Villains, as one of the villains in the story, who perform a hostile takeover of the House of Mouse until Mickey stops them and they flee in fear. Next, Hook reappears in the 2003 live-action movie adaptation, Peter Pan, which closely follows the events of the original story as well as his original description, again as the main antagonist, being portrayed by Jason Isaacs. Here, he's portrayed very similarly to his Disney version, but now also has a beard, wears entirely red clothes with a golden lining, has a red hat with a red and black feather, and has his right hand replaced with a hook, as opposed to the left. Additionally, he's shown to have a collection of various other replacements for his hand besides just a hook, which mainly serve as weapons. In the story, he mainly follows his traditional path of battling with Peter, kidnapping his friends in order to lure him in, trying to use poison to kill him, but also he's shown to be able to use manipulative tactics and almost defeat Peter when he begins to convince and taunt Peter by telling him that Wendy will leave him forever, causing Peter to fall to the ground, powerless. However, regardless of his many attempts, he still gets defeated by Peter and his friends, and this time eaten by a crocodile at the end. Hook cameos in the 2004 animated movie Shrek 2 as a minor character several times, playing the piano and singing during dramatic points in the story, voiced by Ian McShane. Next, Hook reappears in the 2007 animated sequel movie Shrek the Third, in a much more significant antagonistic role, voiced by Ian McShane. Here, as in the previous Shrek movie, he appears noticeably changed, now wearing a purple jacket with a yellow shirt, a black tricorn hat, and a gold hook, having a thick mustache and a middle-length haircut. In the story, after Prince Charming first meets him and his crew and tries to call them friends, Hook responds that they aren't friends and tries to beat him up. But soon, Charming convinces him to unite together and overtake the far, far away kingdom, which he accepts and participates in. However, as soon as he tries to battle with Shrek and bring him to Charming to be executed, his whole pirate team gets demolished by Shrek, who even completely destroys his piano. At the end, at Charming's play where he prepared to kill Shrek, Hook and the other villains laugh as Shrek jokes hilariously about Charming on stage and then try to kill him, but soon gets stopped by Artie, who moves them with his speech, after which Hook is the first one to drop his weapon, redeeming himself and also confess that he grows daffodils. In the 2011 live-action short series adaptation and a prequel to the original story, Neverland, Hook reappears as the main antagonist, portrayed by Rhys Ifans. Here, he at first is shown to be an English gentleman before becoming a pirate, who had a romantic relationship with Peter's mother until they broke up. And later, after she met someone else and conceived a child, Peter, he killed her partner out of jealousy. However, after he found out that she died during Peter's birth, he regretted his actions and adopted Peter as his own. Many years later, he became a fencing teacher and a leader of a small group of juvenile street thieves, whom he used, alongside Peter, to steal a mysterious glass orb, which transported him and the children to Neverland after he accidentally dropped it. Upon entering Neverland, they quickly get captured by a band of pirates, led by Captain Elizabeth Bonny, who later develops a romantic relationship with him and also asks him for help in finding the magical dust, which gives one the ability to fly in exchange for the boy's safety. During his journey with the pirates, he changes his London classic attire to the pirate clothes and also assumes the pirate identity over time, getting obsessed with the potential of the magic dust and desiring to obtain it by any means. However, at the end, after Hook finally meets Peter, Peter engages him in a heated battle and defeats him as a result, ending in him cutting off Hook's right hand and leaving him in a collapsing cave. Then, Hook appears in the children's animated TV show Jake and the Neverland Pirates, based on both the Disney Peter Pan franchise and the original story, as the primary antagonist voiced by Corey Burton. In the series, he appears as a cartoonish version of his Disney design, as well as also depicted as much more comical and immature, to adapt him to the children's audience. The story takes off after Hook abandoned the idea of leaving the island in order to obtain the various treasures of Neverland for himself, which he's constantly failing to do because of Jake and his crew, who have been entrusted by Peter Pan to keep him at bay. Hook's story and its details also get elaborated upon, as shown in the episode Mama Hook Knows Best, where Hook is shown to meet and spend time with his mother, who is also a pirate, trying to make her proud of him, even though he's not actually great at pirating, but then learning that she's proud of him just the way he is. Also, his romantic side is shown in the episode Hook and the Itty Bitty Kitty, where he falls in love with another pirate, Red Jessica, whom he expected to be interested in him as well, but instead ends up being her cat sitter, much to his dismay. Despite his villainous portrayal, he's also shown to be somewhat helpful and altruistic toward others, while still focusing more on himself though, as seen in the episode Battle for the Book, where he restores and returns Wendy her storybook after he finds out that, by destroying it, everyone will forget not only the stories of Peter and his friends, but also his own, which he clearly doesn't like. Hook cameos in the animated TV series Playing with Skully in the episode carrying his nickname Pulley Hook, in which children help him choose a hook to slide from one island to another to reach the treasure. Captain Hook debuts as the main character in the 4th episode of the 2nd season of the ABC's fantasy TV show Once Upon a Time, portrayed by Colin O'Donoghue, with his younger self being portrayed by Oliver Bell. He is based on the character with the same name from the original Peter Pan story and the Disney movie Peter Pan. In the story, before becoming Captain Hook, he was known as Killian Jones, who was abandoned by his father, Brennan Jones, who sold him and his younger brother, Liam Jones, into a ship's servitude. Killian and Liam learned to fend for themselves and soon began working for a king, who later sent them to Neverland to retrieve the plant Dreamshade. But Killian is reluctant to follow orders after Peter Pan informs them it is poisonous. However, the stubborn younger brother ultimately gets killed by the plant, leading Killian to become his own captain of the Jolly Roger. Sometime after, he seduces away Rumpelstiltskin's wife Mila, after which Rumple, having become the master of black magic and nicknamed Crocodile for his scaly skin as a result, cuts off Killian's hand as revenge, and then he replaces it with a hook, thus receiving his alias, Captain Hook. By season 3, Killian has fallen in love completely with Emma Swan, a protagonist in the TV show, and also began teaching her how to fight with a sword to defend herself. In the episode There's No Place Like Home, he reveals that he even sacrificed his most valuable possession, the Jolly Roger, in order to save her. In the future, he becomes her husband and a stepfather to Henry Mills and a father to Hope. Hook makes a cameo in the 2012 animated short Electric Holiday as one of the visitors at the Runaway Fashion Show. Hook reappears in the 2014 live-action TV special Peter Pan Live, which is an adaptation of the 1954 musical, again as the main antagonist, played by Christopher Walken. Here, he appears looking quite similar to the Disney incarnation, but also having a red band on the head, a gold earring on the left ear, a mole on the right cheek, a beard, and his left hand as a hook. In the story, he closely follows the traditional arc, but also with additional elements of singing and dancing throughout his journey. Next, in the 2014 fairy franchise animated movie The Pirate Fairy, which is set before the events of Peter Pan's story, Hook appears as one of the main antagonists of the story, voiced by Tom Hiddleston. Here, he appears as his younger Disney version, clearly having the same body and face proportions, but without a mustache, having his long hair tied behind him and with his hands intact, since he hasn't yet met Peter. In the story, he first appears working together with a rogue fairy, Czarina, who escaped from Pixie Hollow because of her dangerous experiments with fairy dust, whom he initially pretends to admire and cherish, even proclaiming her to be the captain of the ship. But he does all this just to make her trust him and bring him the blue fairy dust, which produces the gold dust that allows one to fly. Right after she delivers him the blue dust and creates their own dust tree, as well as teaches him how to fly, he gets rid of her by trapping her inside a lantern and prepares to fly on their ship to plunder the riches of the 7 seas. However, despite his ability to fly and an advantage of big size, he still loses at the end, after Czarina gets saved by the very fairies who together outsmart him and his crew. Following, Hook appears in the 2015 live-action movie Pan, which plays a role of a prequel to the original Peter Pan story, for the first time as one of the main protagonists in the plot, portrayed by Garrett Hedlund. Here, he appears as a young adult man with short brown hair, wearing a white shirt, brown pants, and a blue jacket, as well as, interestingly, having a nickname Hook as his actual last name without any connection to cut off hands. In the story, Hook first appears as one of the enslaved miners alongside Peter Pan by Blackbeard, working to unearth fairy dust, where they both meet each other. Here, Hook was never connected with pirating or any other criminality before and simply wished to be free and leave Neverland, which he was finally able to achieve after he found out that Peter could fly and then agreed to cooperate with him in order to escape on the flying ship. However, he was stopped before he could leave Neverland by Peter, who wanted to find his mother first. After which they got into a jungle where they discovered a population of Indians, one of whom, Tiger Lily, not only helped them fight the pirates, but also became a romantic interest for Hook in the process. During their final battle with Blackbeard, Hook almost died due to him falling from the ship, but thanks to Peter, who flew to catch him before he could crash, he got saved and together they managed to defeat Blackbeard. On their way back to London to rescue the Lost Boys, a now captain of the Jolly Roger, Hook clearly shows a reciprocal romantic connection with Tiger Lily and also reaffirms their friendship with Peter, being certain that nothing will ever go wrong between them. Then Hook reappears in the live comedy sketch show Saturday Night Live in the skit Captain Hook, portrayed by Sam Rockwell, reprising Hook's Disney incarnation, in which he decides to stop being villain after realizing he's surrounded by children. Hook cameos in the TV show Robot Chicken, in the episode Mr. Mozzarella's Hamburger Skateboard Depot, where he pretends to have a peanut allergy to kill Peter Pan. Then Hook appears in the animated series The Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse, in the episode Untold Treasures, as a gold statue of himself. Hook cameos next in the 2021 animated crossover short, The Simpsons in Plusaversary, as one of the villains invited to the Disney Plus Day party. Following, Hook appears in the 2022 animated short, Welcome to the Club, as one of the villains, singing to Lisa about what it is like to be a villain, voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. Hook reappears in the 2023 live-action movie Peter Pan and Wendy, based on the 1904 play of the same name, in his antagonistic role, portrayed by Jude Law. Here, he appears as an adult man with long graying hair, a thick mustache, and a beard, with several scars on his face and having his right hand as a hook, wearing clothes similar to the Disney incarnation, but with the addition of epaulets and a side-to-side bicorn hat without any feathers. In the story, Hook continues his traditional path of wanting revenge against Peter for cutting off his hand, but additionally, the movie also reveals Hook and Peter's former relationship, which started off as friendly, but after Hook left Neverland in search of his mother, subsequently got lost and then was saved in the sea by the pirates, and then returned back. Peter rejected him as a friend because of how much he has changed in his eyes, and since that very time they became enemies. Sometime after this, Hook evidently got into a fight with Peter, in which he famously lost one of his hands. In modern times, Hook follows Peter until he finally discovers him and makes a seemingly fatal blow to him, but still doesn't get any satisfaction from this action. However, after Peter gets healed and returns for their final battle, during its conclusion, Peter tries to apologize for being a bad friend and save him, but Hook rejects it and falls into the sea instead. But after Peter returned from London back to Neverland, it was revealed that Hook actually survived, and once they looked at each other, Hook smiled at him friendly, probably signaling that he might have forgiven Peter after all. Hook reappears in the 2023 live-action musical movie Descendants: The Rise of Red as one of the villains in the story, portrayed by Joshua Coley. Here he appears as a teenager, wearing a red jacket, a white shirt, and black pants, and having his left hand as a hook. In the story, he's a student at Merlin Academy and a member of Uliana's group, who mock and belittle the young Queen of Hearts Bridget, until Uliana's face transforms into that of a flamingo due to her eating flamingo feathers from Bridget's cupcakes. Afterwards, while desiring to get revenge on Bridget, Hook and the group decide to steal the sorcerer's cookbook to do so, but then get frozen by it instead as a result, causing Principal Merlin to punish them with a detention for a long time. Finally, Hook reappears in the 2025 live-action horror movie Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare as a secondary character, portrayed by Charity Case as an adult and Lucas Allerman as a child. Here, instead of being an arrogant, vain, greedy, and revengeful pirate, This version of Hook was originally just a child, and the very first victim of the bloodthirsty and sadistic serial killer Peter Pan, who kidnapped him at the beginning after seeing him during his performance in the circus from his house after murdering his mother. Then, Hook isn't seen for many years until he was revealed by Wendy Darling to actually still be alive, but now being grown up, chained and bound in the dark of Pan's basement, appearing heavily mutilated with one of his hands replaced with a hook, and mentally unstable, screaming horrifically at Wendy after seeing her. Then, he appears for the final time during the end, after Peter battled with Wendy and got severely injured, emerging from behind, impaling Pan and dragging him underground as he screams.